Okay, we're here from Warrior Concepts, Bujinkan Morino Toro Dojo. I apologize for the late start. We had some technical glitches, get this stuff up and running, but here we are with this week's Whiteboard Wednesday. So again, if you've been following along, you know that today we're going to be talking about Metsubishi, right? Metsubushi, the U is often clipped, so it can often sound like Metsubishi, right? But what this is site removers, right? Site removing, affecting the attacker's site, right? So got a couple of notes here. I want to make sure that I don't miss anything, right? So when most people think of Metsubishi, what they tend to think of is a weapon, right? A tool, right? This blinding powder, right? There are these little box mechanisms for blowing this stuff out or filling a hollowed egg or whatever, right? I'm really not going to cover like how to make it, all that kind of stuff today. What I actually want to take a look at is how, right? How to affect the eyes. So we're going to start with the idea of what we're doing with blinding powder, right? Which is kind of the duh thing for most people, right? It's where most people drop off because, right? Here's somebody else on YouTube or wherever, right? Making a video about the same stuff that I already know. Okay, fair enough. Except today, we're going to cover 4 different tactical ways to affect somebody's eyes to either, well, whether we're doing it literally or figuratively, to blind them, to make them not be able to see you when you're doing something, okay? And if we're only focusing on the obvious, then we're going to miss a couple of other things, okay? So, again, more than just blinding powder, right? And I know, right? Folks are already thinking about, well, what can I throw if I don't have blinding powder? Again, we're going to get through that, right? But that's the obvious, right? Remember, this is Ninjutsu. We're studying Ninjutsu, which means that, and if you understand Ninjutsu, it means that nothing is ever what it looks like, right? If it's as obvious as every other martial art, then people have probably seen it, okay? What we want to do is be focusing on things that people have not seen. That's what gets you the edge. That's what gets, helps you get that jump on things, right? This area is also a huge part of the Warrior Concepts Yondan requirements, right? Which is heavily laden with Togakure ninja school kind of techniques and tactics, right? And Metsubishi is this huge tactic, especially when you're dealing with multiple attackers and you're in a mutodori kind of situation, right? They're armed, you're not. Actually, we're always armed, but right, we've got this thing, okay? So again, when people think about invisibility, right? They think about Inponjutsu. When they think about invisibility in the ninja's arts, right? They tend to think about stealth, right? Or sneaking into or out of someplace, right? But stealth is for fighting as well, right? I was taught to use the stealth footwork kind of things in a taijutsu one-to-one kind of dealing with people because it helps, right? Deal with or manage things from the legs, right? Against their legs, those kind of things, right? But this is actually where Metsubishi comes in, right? Now, if I'm toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose, and toe-to-toe with somebody, and they're right here, and we're wrestling and whatnot, right? If I unleash blinding powder, I throw something at them, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense, right? Because I run the risk of it getting in my eyes as well, right? Or I throw a handful of coins at them, and then it bounces off their face, bounces into my face, right? Certain reflexive and reactive things can happen that can also affect my sight, right? So true story, back in my cop days, I remember my partner and I were dealing with, the unruly assailants and, perpetrators and things like that, right? And on one instance, I had one partner that was not mindful that it was a blustery day, right? I unloaded, back then we didn't have pepper spray. We had something called mace, which was freaking worse, right? But unloaded this stuff. And yes, part of it hit the assailant, the guy we were dealing with, right? But the wind put it back in his eyes as well, right? So now I'm effectively without my partner because he's on the ground writhing as well. And I'm trying to, manage the situation, right? So again, got to be careful how we use this and how much we understand it to make sure that it's actually working, right? But I actually want to go way, way past that kind of thing so that we can understand, because just like in lots of other areas of the art, right? We have the omote, the obvious side, we have the ura, hidden side, but like there's this obvious kind of thing, right? But we really want to dive down into it. If we can understand the concept and the principle that's being conveyed. Because ultimately, in the old scrolls, right, there's this concept of becoming invisible in the eyes of the enemy. Okay? Literally, you can move around in plain sight. It's not that they can't physically see you, right? They're not seeing you as a threat, as an enemy, whatever, or they will just, their eyes will scan the area and they literally won't see you. It doesn't make you translucent, right? But because there became a time, right? Jigoku, the Warring States period, right? They had to produce more ninja faster, right? So people didn't have the same number of years to develop these skills fully. So that's where things like this came from, right? Where it became an expedient, right? So I can't do some wild, cool, Kuji, whatever, get this guy to not see me, whatever, right? So I've got this expedient where I can toss this stuff and make things happen, right? I can get warriors out faster that are able to do similar things, but ultimately, right, this is where we're heading, okay? So, but if we look at the principles and concepts, right, the principles behind the concept, then we can see that the tool, right, the blinding powder, the shuriken, the whatever, right, they're a model, they're an example, they're a place to start, just like with all kata, all techniques, right? We just came out of our weekend on our Daikomyo-sai weekend, and the focus was on understanding kata. And I don't mean doing the kata, I mean just understanding things from different perspectives, right? And Hatsumi Sensei had a really, really good quote. I think it was from one of the books. I can't remember. I can't place it at the moment. It's circulating all over the internet as a meme, right? But he said, the technique is not an end in and of itself. The technique is not the lesson. It merely points to where you need to start. So in a lot of these Whiteboard Wednesday things, I'm taking something that people get and take for granted. They think they fully understand it. And what we're looking at is the tactical strategic application to get more out of it. Okay. And again, a lot of people sign on to these things and think that there's going to be some kind of like performing monkey, right? I'm not here to do any kind of performance and demonstrations. That's what our Friday program, our Friday virtual class is about. I should probably bring that overlay up. So for those of you who, I'm going to use this figuratively so I don't freak anybody out, right? Who religiously, right, hop on the Friday virtual class to get the technical, the physical way to apply a lot of this stuff, right? There's that URL if you want to use that. If you're not already in our Ninpo Masterclass, those people get like all these classes, right? Anyway, oh, wrong one. That's not dry erase. Okay, so again, Metsubishi comes from this idea of affecting the sight, right? And at least for an instant in time, becoming invisible in the eyes of the enemy, okay? So what we're going to do today, right, is we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking, you're going to be learning, right? We're going to be taking a look at 4 ways to attack his eyes. And I don't mean blinding powder, shaking up a soda bottle and letting the spray hit his eye. I don't mean 4 ways like that, right? That's one category. We'll look at 4 different categories or classifications of sight remover concepts, okay? And we need to get our head wrapped around how to go about creating moments in time where you can move from one position to another and he can't see you. As a matter of fact, in that instant when he's trying to recover, he's always going to recover back to the last place he saw you, right? So I'll talk about that as well, okay? So I'm going to jump around a little bit because I scribbled out a bunch right, yesterday or was it Monday, whatever, when I came up with the topic, and I organized it a little bit better, but I'm going to look between 2 sheets because I don't want to shortchange on anything, right? I want to make sure you get this stuff, okay? So 4 different places, right? One of them, it's going to sound like it's 3, but I split it out because you need to understand the difference in what we're looking at, okay? So, right, Two of these are physical. One is physical, but you're taking advantage of something different, right? It's still physical, but it's neurological. Okay, so it's attached to the mind, not because you're doing something physical to him. You're not touching him, throwing something at him, or whatever, right? I mean, ultimately you are, but they're different. You'll see. Okay, so we've got four of these things. Okay. So we're going to take a look at it from the physical standpoint, the mental standpoint, and then we're actually going to take a look at it from the kind of like again, it's still a mind thing, but more of a spiritual. We're going to attack his belief system. We're going to attack his sensibilities, kind of thing, right? So how the hell does that affect his eyes? Thanks for joining. Say at the amusement parks, please hold a bar. The ride's beginning. Okay. All right. So first one, we're going to take a look at literal, right? Both literal in like we're attacking the eyes, but also literal Metsubishi, right? So we'll call this literal number one, okay? And so so this is more of a mechanical kind of thing, right? Mechanical, okay? So, So when most people think of Metsubishi, again, they think of the blinding powder, right? So we've got that, right? So we've got this blinding powder, right? Kind of a sand, ash, pepper kind of mix, right? One of the traditional formulas, right? So blinding powder, right? I mentioned, right? Shaking up a soda bottle, right? You're drinking soft drink, pop, whatever you call it in your area of the world, right? Sparkling water, right? If you're the Perrier kind of person, right? You shake this thing up, kind of shift your thumb across the top of it, like you might, like a water hose or whatever, to get that at a higher pressure, right? Psh, pop it out there, right? That kind of thing. So spraying liquid. We'll just leave it right there, okay? So spraying liquid. What else? All of this are things that you can do. So we got that. Shoot again. Throwing pencils, pens. Whatever, right? You had your hands in your pocket, pull out some coins, throw those during a roll, right? Grabbing some grass or some dirt or small stones or whatever. The roll masks the fact that you grab this, and then as you're maneuvering, right? So you do this little ninja roll, and immediately most fighters are going to think, WTF? What the hell, right? Or that you're some kind of freaking ninja wannabe goober or whatever, but you're actually doing it to cover the fact that you're loading your hand with this stuff that is on the ground, right? Yes, it changes your position and changes your distance. He has to close back in again, but now you're going to take up that fight position again, and then at the right moment, you're going to let this stuff go, or you can just wait till you parry. His face is right here, and you come up from underneath his peripheral vision, right? So it's a sudden attack because he's paying attention to you over here, right? We always want to flank him. We always want to attack in places that typically Hatsumi Sensei called the unseen points, right? He's not paying attention to it. He either can't see it or he's not paying attention to it or whatever, right? Learn to be a magician. Draw their attention, that kind of thing, okay? So we have here? So dirt, grass, that kind of stuff, right? Think about anything that you could throw. You're probably right. Let's see. So, I was just talking to Shoshi Whistler the other night. I think it was during the weekend for camp, and we were talking about this upcoming topic that I'm covering. And he shared this story. He remembers this one of our yearly camps a bunch of years ago, where he was actually being tested for, I think maybe Shodan, something like that, right? I have different types of tests for different students, and he and Shoshi Paul, who just recently passed, they ended up, they didn't have the typical organized test, and I almost never do the honorary, oh, by the way, you're now this rank, okay? If I do that, it's still not honorary. I've seen that they fill the standards that are required, right? But anyway, this was just happening to be one of those times when he and or Shoshi Whistler, Shoshi Paul, were being tested at one of our yearly camps, right? So these weekend intensive kind of things. And for those tests, I invited other black belts to come in, not only to teach breakout sessions, but because they were helping me test these guys, so their tests were effectively like, I don't know, 18 hours long. Okay, they weren't allowed to quit, they weren't allowed to stop, whatever. But anyway, Shoshi Whistler was saying, you know, the first time that it really jumped out at him to break away from the blinding powder kind of thing was he was helping Cord Elliott, right? Shoji Elliott from Toronto, demonstrate some things. And he's just kind of, he's invited to come up to be the uke, and he gets up and he's not even in range yet to start like balling up the fist and getting ready. And just as he kind of turns, Sensei Elliott just grabs the bill of his ball cap, whips it into his face right across this distance. So while he's responsibly covering his eyes, right, to protect himself against this incoming thing, right, Sensei Elliott closed the distance, so he no sooner moved the ball cap, right, or deflected it, and next thing you know, he's being thrown to the ground. Okay, so really, really cool story. We all have things like that, right? But again, it was this part of it was this unexpected kind of thing, right? You don't warn people that you're carrying. You don't warn people that you're armed. You don't warn people. And when I say warning, you're warning people when you brag about stuff. You're warning people when you highlight things. For the longest time, my young girls had to get their head wrapped around the fact that most people thought the clip that was exposed for my clip knife, right? They knew Daddy carried a knife, right? I even taught them how to like take it out of my pocket and put it in my hand while the bad guy was busy staring at my hands, right? So they knew what it was. And then, you know, I remember one time my daughter was with me and she sees this guy, and this is back when pagers were popular, right? And so, you know, she asked this guy, you know, what's that? And he goes, oh, it's a pager like your daddy has. My daughter's right in the middle of, oh, that's not a pager. That's a, and so I shushed her. I said, I'll explain later, right? So everybody else just thought that was a pager just turned into my pocket instead of out and exposed. Okay. So they had to learn, oh, secret ninja thing. Just because daddy has a knife, nobody else has to know that's a knife. If they want to think that there's a pager in my pocket, more power to them, but even more power to us. Okay. So, but anyway, this really has to do with attacking somebody so that their physical, reflexive, instinctive, protective reactions take over. Eyelids close, head turns to avert, hands come up to cover the eyes, whatever it is, right? So you're attacking them in a way that their reflex, right, takes it, okay? So this is the most obvious, right? Now, the thing with blinding powder, right, with Metsubishi, I think I threw out sand, ash, and pepper, right? Typically in Japan, pepper is white pepper, not black pepper like we have in the U.S. and a lot of places in the West, right? So it blends in more, and that gives it this white kind of look, right? The sand, right? Not as tan, all that kind of stuff, right? So what you're really looking at is a mixture that affects things tactily, not tactically, tactily, right? So it's sand is bouncing off the skin, stuff like that. It's gritty, that kind of stuff, right? You have the ash and the white pepper that creates this white smoke screen, because the sand doesn't do that, right? Sand is going to fly and fall, right? But that's what powders out, right? So the ash creates more of the smoke screen combined with the pepper, but the pepper also now is like pepper spray, right? It's going to affect the olfactory system, right? They're going to breathe it in, and it's going to affect the surface of the eye, right? So now you got tearing up and you got runny nose and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's multi-layered, right? It's not just a single kind of thing. But play around with all kinds of things, right? So anyway, so that's the most obvious, right? And I've got a long list, right? I mean, is there anything I didn't read off of here? Well, I'm sure there is, right? Shuriken, dirt, blinding powder. You can even, like, if you're tactically moving around, right? Just put your hand in front of or over his eyes, right? At the moment you're going to punch something else, right? He's going to reflexively go after the hand that's at his eyes, moving the shields, moving the guards, and that opens things up. Okay. You can, if you have a jacket, right? It's not unheard of, right? Maybe you've heard of this. People are talking smack and whatnot, and somebody will back up, take the jacket off or whatever, because they don't want that in the way while they're fighting, right? Well, you might do that, but you almost also might have the jacket over your sleeve. You might have a blanket if you're out on a picnic, whatever, right? At the beach, okay? It's cool because the towel or the blanket's going to now have sand in it and all that, right? But you can tactically move, throw that over their head or face, right? That's tomoe jutsu. If you have been through many of the older ninja books, right? You know that some of the ninja used nets, fishing nets, right? So it's that kind of idea, right? Learn how to throw it so that it works that way, okay? So again, this is literal, but it's mechanical. Number one, it's still reflexive, but what I'm talking about is it causes the eyelids to close to protect the eyes. Whatever. Everything that's happening is the physical body is moving into a position to protect the eyes. The head may drop, the head may move, whatever. Blinking is occurring and all that kind of stuff, right? Now, in the next one, those things may occur, but it's not the same, okay? So let's see. Let's look at, I've got these things all over the place. Okay, so let's look at another reflexive, okay? But we're not throwing something, right? We're not throwing an object, coins and all that. I know I talked about the hand. That kind of is an overlap with these other things, right? So we'll just call this reflexive, right? Okay, so I'll get to literal number 2 here in a minute, because that's still mechanical, and it's still about the body protecting the eyes, but it's more neurological. I want to stay like physical here for the moment. Okay, so reflexive, right? Well, let me tell you about a technique that we have, right? I think it comes from the Kukishinden off the top of my head. If I'm wrong, don't shoot me, right? It's just you can only hold so many kata in your head and so many scrolls and so many whatever before I have to freaking go look it up. I didn't look it up before the class, okay? We have this technique, teiken, okay? Teiken. So the way this thing works is the person throws a punch, right? You do uke nagash, right? So he avoids and misses, right? And then you reach out with this shinken or shitan-ken that most people know of, right? And you strike at the corner of the eye, the orbit of the eye socket, right? I invite you to take a shitan-ken or even a boshi-ken and tap that ridge right here where it kind of rounds out, right? If it's out here, you're getting close to the temple and it's flat. If you right on the edge, where if you go on the other side, you're in the socket where the eyeball is, right? But right on that edge, under the brow line, all the way around, right? It's really, really sensitive, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to strike that, right? Hit to knock his head sideways, right? This way. And as I'm striking through, not before. If you get the timing wrong, it doesn't work, right? I want to hit and then leap in that direction. What I just say? I'm striking the side of his corner of his eye, right? Which is going to knock his face which way? That way. And then I'm going to leap over in the same direction. It's an invisibility technique. Well, shit, Sensei, how's it an invisibility technique if I knock his eyeballs where I'm going to leap? See, this is where this counterintuitive stuff comes in, and people that only learn the kata or only understand obvious things and don't study farther miss the freaking magic, okay? Here's the magic. There's also this part going on. When I hit this and knock his head this way, he's going to at least flinch that eyeballs, or the eyelid's going to close, more likely both of them, but there's also movement, right? If you move your head, if you're looking out at the world and you move your head quickly, everything becomes a blur, okay? So if he's closed his eyes, right, a couple of things going on here because this is psychological, right? Right? Moves this way, and then he needs to stay in the fight, right? I just hit him, but it was just a light tag. I didn't knock him out. I knocked him over here, right? He needs to be back in the fight, right? Less than half a second later, he's going to be back in the fight. So I hit. He's going to move back to where he saw me last. This is why it's important not to leap while you're striking or leap before you strike, because he's going to see you move to the new position, right? I strike and leap. It's all part of the same action. Strike, leap. See if I can't just break the place while we're at it. Okay? Not like a little excitement for you, right? So there's that timing, okay? I guess there will be a dancing monkey today. Anyway, so what's happening is he's over here. He has an imperative need to get back into the fight before I hit him again, right? Before I end this damn thing, right? So he gets hit and he moves back because he wants to be back here where I am. How did he miss me, Sensei? I'm right there because his eyes are opening and he's moving quickly. So his eyes are partially blurred and the world is partially blurred as he's getting back over here, and he will look right past you. And when he doesn't see you here, he's going to scan because psychologically you can't be over there. He was just over there, right? So he doesn't understand the mechanism of the eye either. So he's going to be the last place he's going to look is where you leapt to. So you have this huge advantage, right? There's this huge bubble you've created using this timing, okay? It's a really, really cool thing, right? If you haven't tried this kata or kata like it from this idea, right? This past weekend, we focused on kata and taking a look at other things that kata can be teaching you if you just change your damn perspective and get away from step 1, step 2, step 3. Ta-da, right? That goes in my kata collecting book, just like my stamps and my coins go in those collecting books, right? If we can get past that baby type training, right, then the kata might actually be able to learn us something, right? So anyway, so there's we could from an Ichimonji or Seigan, right, from right here, just stab at his eyes, right? Whether you hit his eyes or not, right, he's going to reflexively flinch. Okay. What else do I have in here, right? Again, hitting the orbital socket. He can just knock his head sideways. He may or may not close his eyes. You could do some other things that are like this, but they're a little bit bigger, right? Like with this stuff here, let's back up just a little bit, right? I talked about rolling and picking up grass or picking up stone. But what if this person is chasing me, he's gaining on me? A great tactic is to drop and roll at just as they're about to touch you, right? To just drop and roll. So now you're not up here to grab, you're down here. But as I drop and roll, I can take my lead hand. If I've gotten really good at rolling without my hands, I can just roll up my arm and all that. If I'm on a surface like this, as I'm dropping to roll, I can just grab or scoop whatever I'm on, sand, stone, whatever, and scoop it backwards as I'm dropping into the roll. So now as I'm dropping in and he's right behind me, suddenly it's like tires that spin on dirt or whatever and kicks up all that crap, right? So we're just going to flip it up at him as we go, right? So it's that kind of thing. In this case, what I'll take a look at is the idea of like maybe you're holding a cat or a dog or a pet or something like that, right? And this is a kunoichi technique. A technique for the ninja women, right? They would carry a cat and then and back in the day, they didn't declaw cats. So you had a cat coming at you, right? That kind of thing. And then they could just move in or escape or whatever. Similar to that, if you have the book by Hatsumi Sensei, Ninjutsu History and Tradition, in the weapons section, on the page that's describing the kusarigama, right? The sickle, the weighted sickle with the weighted chain, the kyoketsu shoge, the hook dagger with the long rope and the weight and that kind of stuff, right? There's actually a tactic that's shown in there where the ninja would tie a poisonous snake to the cord, right? Because there's a tactic that we have with the shoge where you throw the ring not at him, but next to him, right? Enough that he perceives that, well, that was a lousy shot. He's going to get out of the way and he might try to grab it or whatever. But what you're doing is sending it past him so you can pull on the cord and then get the weight that he's now thinking that missed him to punch him in the back of the head or in the back of the spine or whatever, right? Well, in this case, the shoge cord or the chain or whatever is a carrier for this poisonous snake. So you're going to whip it out there so that the snake lands on him. Now the snake is pissed off twice because, one, he got caught. Two, he got tied to this thing and he's flying through the air. So he's going to just freaking bite at anything. So while this jackwagon that was thought he was going to attack you and kill you is dealing with this poisonous snake, you can easily walk in and be done with it. Okay. So the idea, again, is using these reflexive kind of things, right? You can, reach out with a Bic lighter or something like that, right? Flick it and get these flames out there. Or if you have something on fire, just toss it in their direction, whatever, okay? So it's kind of a bridge, but what I'm really looking at is this idea of you're attacking him in a way that causes him to move, and you're moving while things are blurred, okay? Here you're causing blurring that just stays. In this one, it's only going to be just for a brief moment. Okay, but it's more hands-on, that kind of thing, right? So I'll just you'll remember this when it's Teiken? I think it's Teiken. Anyway, this kata, right, where you're just it's right kosei for those of you who need to remember, right? Knock his head to the side. Right, this will just be our quick example here, right? Because I don't feel like writing all that I just said, right? That's why you get a recording. Okay, so let's go back to another mechanical thing. Okay, so we're going to go back to literal, right? This will be literal number 2, right? What I'm trying to do is go from obvious to not so obvious. Okay, this shit's easy. This shit's easy to get your head wrapped around. Anything on the omote side of training, it's easy to get your head wrapped around, okay? But this stuff is where the magic is, because this requires you to study more, to understand more, so that you don't fight or you don't act or you don't think like everybody else. If you think and act like the greater majority of the population, most of these people have either seen it, thought about it, or the body's already geared to handle that, right? But these obvious things only happen for a second or two or a microsecond or whatever, right? The quicker he can clear from this, he's back in the game. What we're going to be looking at here are ways to attack the sensibility where either he can't, which is what we're going to look at right here, he can't get it back quickly, right? And this last one down here, he won't want to. He won't want to, okay? So you got to remember, right? Ninja, psychological warfare, right? We need to attack people where they live, okay? We have to really great line. I don't know if I just shared this recently. I know I did. I just can't remember if it was with my inner circle students or if it was on this past week's Kuden or whatever, right? Really great line from a superhero movie, Daredevil, if you've seen it, right? The one of the villains, right? His name was Bullseye, right? Throws shuriken and broken glass and all kinds of stuff. Apparently he doesn't miss. Daredevil made a miss, whatever. Okay. So anyway, he's talking to the top head guy, right? Kingpin, whatever the hell they are. All these things bleed together for me. I just like watching action movies. But anyway, Kingpin says to Bullseye, how do you get at somebody who has no fear? And Bullseye said, you put fear in him. Okay. So one of the things that students are going over in Mod 3, my Mod 3 students are going over right now, is exploring some psychological warfare tactics of the ninja, where we're talking about the 5 weaknesses and the 5 needs. Okay. And if you know what one or more on each list is for somebody, you don't need to physically fight them. You don't need to force them. Okay? They will be an accomplice to their own ass kicking because they're so afraid of these things, of losing certain things, having certain things happen or whatever, or not getting these things. All you have to do is offer to make certain things go away and to provide certain things. Shit, look at society now. How easy it is to get the fearful to actually want a totalitarian system to force everyone to do whatever the fearful think will protect them so that they don't die. People that were fearful of a totalitarian government, all you have to do is flip the switch and present something that scares them about losing health, life, wealth, whatever. And suddenly those same people are for a totalitarian system because, again, they're fearful and meek. So if I can get the guys with the guns to force you people to do what I need or what I want, I don't have to be strong. I just have to scream a whole lot. Okay? So anyway, again, being a ninja is hard. Okay? We have a new t-shirt on WCIDragonsden.com. It says, everybody wants to be a ninja, so it's time to do ninja shit. Okay? So, literal number 2. This is mechanical as well, but this is neurological, right? So what we're talking about, where this is mechanical and throwing things at them and you know, the eyelids flinch, the arms covered, and all that kind of stuff, right? What we're going to do right here is we're going to attack the eyeball itself. Okay? Oops. The eyeball's mechanism. I can hear it already, all the way across the void. Well, Sensei, you're attacking the eyeball up here. Yeah, but I'm not talking about the same thing. Okay? What I'm talking about right here is the eyeball's mechanism. Right? I need to attack them neurologically, psychologically, mentally, so that the eyeball and the way it works backfires on them. Okay? So think nighttime, and this person's coming at me, right? If you've ever had one of these, something like this happen, you know that it can be everything from disorienting to physically painful, right? And so I just click a flashlight in their eyes, right? So what does that do? It makes their pupils constrict, right? Just like in the daytime, right? Our pupils are smaller. Nighttime, they dilate, they open up, okay, to let in more light, okay? So at nighttime, eyeballs are open, right? It's kind of like the jackwagon driving at you with his high beams on or whatever, right? And it's painful, right? That you have a chance to do something about, but a sudden blinding light to the eyes causes the eye to protect itself, right? You're attacking his night vision, okay? So, okay, it can take up to a full 30 minutes for the eye to get back to the state of night vision it was in before you zapped him with the light, okay? So what else do I have for that one? Reflected light, right? So this even works daytime. Right? So the eyes adjust to whatever light source you have, okay? So if we're tactically in a battle where this guy outmaneuvers me and the sun's to his back because he's hoping it's in my eyes, right? So classically, right, traditionally, we might, have our sword, that kind of thing, right? So what I can do is just change the angle of the blade, reflect that light back, okay? That's now a brighter light. The eyes are going to they're going to protect themselves, okay? Let's see, jumping all over the place here. Again, effectively, we're attacking the mechanism itself to get the eyes to dilate, right? He's going to have spots in his eyes and all kinds of things that are going to affect what he can see and how well he can see. Important stuff, okay? Also, like the stabbing of the eyes, when I said putting the hands over the eyes, putting the hands over the eyes doesn't just cover up something that you're striking. When your hand moves from the eyes, remember the eyeballs have already started to dilate because you just darkened it, right? You cut down the amount of light, so they open up, and then the hand's gone, and things are a little bit brighter, right? But what's happening when we stab at the eyes and all that, besides the eyelids dropping and things like that, right? All the muscles in the eye, right? If you've ever had, we do this in the dojo sometimes because we're just, I would say we're weird, but we're weird in the context of what most people actually experiment with, okay? When we're teaching people Seigan, okay, and how this is an attack to the eyes, right? Because we're supposed to be this way. He shouldn't be able to stare me down without looking at a weapon. This is not the same. This is not the same. I have to hope that he looks at my hand and he's worried about it. He has no choice. Okay? So what I do is I walk up to a student, I have him stand in Shizen, and I take up a Seigan, or I just stand this way, right? Kind of a Kukushinden Seigan-ish kind of thing. And I pointed it here, right? And I'm about that far away. Okay? It's all nice and safe. Okay? And I say, I'm not going to touch you. Does this bother you? No, sensei. And I just raise it up. Does this bother you? No? Does this bother you? The closer it gets to the eyes, the more they feel the muscles that move the eyeballs around contract to pull the eyeball, or to attempt to pull the eyeball farther back into the socket. That changes the shape of the eyeball, changes the shape of the lens, changes focus. Okay? We're attacking the sight, right? And on top of that, these things in here where you're actually attacking the eyeball itself, that person will want to, right? The eye is the primary sense for most human beings. You threaten the eyes, you threaten to take that away from them, right? You're attacking the spirit, because people, they need their eyes, right? They don't want to be blinded for life. Okay? So that, right? All right, so where are we? Oh, better get through this. Okay. So let's jump to attacking the mind or the spirit. Okay. All right. You ever do this? You ever catch a bug or have a snake or whatever? I was non-poisonous, preferably, right? Your pet store or whatever, right? Or you take a toy spider, toy snake or whatever, and toss it towards somebody that you know is afraid of those things. Right, yeah. They don't do this. That's cool, dude. Toss it back at you. Okay? Not only do they move away from it, right? But they don't want to look at it. Okay? In Japan, you can get fake poop in a lot of stores. It's actually a Buddhist symbol, right? And you can actually get fake poop that's golden. Okay? Because everything is value. Everything can teach you something, right? So, right? If it's shit, it's not really shit, right? It can help you with things, right? But anyway, right? Can you imagine? Okay. So if you can do something that disgusts them, right? That would make them want to throw up, something that they don't want to look at. Okay. And again, if you know more about their background, their beliefs, their sensibilities, or whatever, right? Okay, then you can pick and choose. Okay, so the uber religionist who is against all kind of vices, right? Hold up a porn magazine. Not that I don't know how I would have one, but anyway, right? So, right, women, right? The girls out there. Okay, I wrote an article a long time ago. 4 strategies that you can use that would get a guy beaten into the ground. Right? That if I tried to do any one of these 4 things, he's going to come at me harder and faster. But for you, it's a distraction. One of those, now he's not looking where? At your hands. Okay? So, guys, I mean, if you think you can get away with it, by all means, give it a shot, but be willing to take a shot, right? So, again, what we're doing here is we're attacking the spirit, right? And like the best way that I can think of is in making them look at something, right? I mean, if I were on the battlefield, right? This guy's coming at me, just shift behind his friend, open that up and go, this is going to be your family when I survive this, right? Or there's other ways to do this as well, where I learned this when I was on a SWAT team as a police officer. And most people think the negotiator's job is to, try to talk this guy down or whatnot. And then when the whatever the code is in different places, it's different, right? But whenever the code for the sniper to take the shot is given, they think that the negotiator's job is over. Okay. And that's not true. Okay. The negotiator has a job during that moment, especially if the person is covered by a victim or whatever, you're using them as a human shield, gun up against their head, that kind of thing, right? So again, understanding psychology, neurology, that kind of thing, right? If this guy is afraid that he's going to be taken out at any moment, right? His entire being is geared on, I'm shooting the victim. Okay. So everything is just waiting, right, to make sure he doesn't die alone or whatever the psychology is. Okay. So that's why the kill shot has to be here. So it shuts down everything from there and the muscles won't twitch. Right. But there's another way to make the muscles not twitch. Okay. And that is for the negotiator just before the shot's taken to ask a question that needs more than a yes or no answer. And the more graphically inducing the question, the better. Okay. So I don't say, do you really want to do this to your kids? Okay. He can say yes or no. He only needs a second, less than that, to process that. It doesn't change anything. But if I say, what would your grandmother think of this? What would your grandmother say right now? Can you imagine the look on your children's face when they hear this 10 minutes from now? He's going to go inside. So his sight mechanism is still operating, but he's in imagination land. And when that happens, the neurology shifted from external to internal, right? And everything changes. So if you can ask, again, attacking the mind of the spirit, you show something that disgusts him, so he doesn't want to look at, or like I'm about to toss it at him, right? If you spit at somebody, that's up here, but it's also down here. Especially if the person, they're a clean freak or, they're prim and proper or whatever, right? You don't even need to spit. Just going, okay? You don't need to do that, okay? Excuse me, that really scratched. Anyway, so, or to ask a question that requires more than a yes or no answer. See how this requires more study than just learning some cool moves? Okay? But the trick, the idea behind sight remover techniques, right, is to become invisible in the eyes of the attacker, if only for a microsecond. That gives you that edge to move, to escape, to move in, whatever. Okay? So it's not just about the blinding powder. It's not just about like throwing up a smoke screen and disappearing. That worked in the ancient world. That doesn't work anymore. And the reason it doesn't work is wherever you threw the smoke, he knows you're in there somewhere. What they had back in the ancient days, at best, shuriken and arrows. But everything else were swords, knives, stabs, spear, whatever. Okay? Today, you throw smoke, or just start shooting in there because you're in there somewhere, right? You're covering your movements. You're in there somewhere. So it doesn't work the same, right? We have to go past the obvious, and especially if you're dealing with somebody who nobody wants to think about this stuff, right? Let's say you had a student. They stuck with you for a while, and for whatever reason, psychology, right? They're something snapped, right? Life stress, whatever it is, right? Or who knows what, right? And they decide they're now your attacker. Right? I'm not telling you to be paranoid, right? But okay, so the more of this they also know, the harder it's going to be to use stuff like this. The more you have to go here. That's why all these strategies and tactics, when I use them against my upper guys, right, very often they'll laugh, okay? Because, and I'd make them explain to the rest of the students, right? They're laughing afterwards, but here's the cool thing. All the way leading up to me doing it, they were paying attention to the fact that I was going to do it. But because of my timing and where I came from and whatnot, it always catches them. And they know the reason why, okay? Because they know what I'm doing, but because I'm affecting them on a neurological level or on a subconscious level, they can't do anything about it. no matter how much they try to beat it, they can't rewire their brain. Okay? So we've got omote, we've got ura, right? All we're trying to do is remove their ability to see either us or our action in the moment to give us that edge. Okay? That's what I had this time. If you want to see some things like we're going to do this kata on Friday and some other ones that have to do with creating that moment where you can take off, right? You can escape, you can attack, whatever. Okay. So if you want to make it in, if you're already not in the Ninpo Masterclass, right, just go to this URL right here, Friday virtual training on onlineninjaacademy.com. $4.99. You'll even get the recording, even if you can't make it. And that's it, right? So hopefully I'll see you. If not, I've given you more than enough to take your training to a whole new level, whole new 3, 4, 5 levels. All right. So thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time on Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday.